Hello and welcome to this episode of the BFG podcast. Today it is an absolute honor to be sitting down with host of The Crowd Goes Wild and the Rock FM host, Andrew Mulligan. Welcome, Andrew. It's a pleasure to have you today.
It's an honour to be on your podcast, Blake. Thanks for the invite.
So, it's done. You're most well known for the Breakers and The Crowd Goes Wild. Uh, Throughout your career. So, how did you get into The Crowd Goes Wild, and how did you start at the Breakers? As we will begin.
So I started on The Crowd Goes Wild in 2006, and I joined Sky, which owns The Crowd Goes Wild, in 2005. Before that, I was working as a sports reporter for TV3's sports department, not the sports news department, but their sport production department. That would have the free-to-air rights of the rugby and the cricket, and they did Fight for Life, and I worked on those for them. And before that, I'd worked with a couple of people, one of them being Clark Gayford, on a TV show in Dunedin called Cow TV when I was a student. I did it with a good friend of mine, Marcus Sontag, and we just had general student hijinks, half-hour pre-recorded show, went out weekly, and that's where I kind of caught the TV bug. And so after going from TV3 to Sky, Sky had bought Prime TV as a free-to-air channel, and so they could acquire sports rights like the Olympics, because you need a free-to-air partner to have the Olympics in your negotiations. So you could either partner with somebody, or you could have your own free-to-air channel, buy that, and that's what Sky decided to do. So they had a slot on 7 p.m. weeknights where they thought, why don't we use that half-hour slot Monday to Friday to do a sports show that exhibits all the sporting content that Sky TV have, as sort of like a fun marketing show. Essentially, that's what Crowd Goes Wild was born out of, an idea to showcase what Sky owned as a subscriber paywall company. And I was already working in the sport department there on another show. They wrapped that show up and took that budget and gave it to The Crowd Goes Wild, and gave it to Rick Solizzo, our executive producer, to turn into The Crowd Goes Wild, what it is now. Was now. It's no longer a 7 p.m. show. It's about to become a 1-hour show on a Monday night and a half-hour show on a Thursday night after the Winter Olympics.
That was going to be my next question, so we'll get into that shortly.
But, okay. So, we're going up against, all the big shows on One and TV2 and TV3, but we weren't under the same pressure as them on a ratings-driven thing. We were more driven by just being consistent and being as successful as we could be. And I came about. I'd previously had a few dealings with Rick. He knew who I was, but I was part of the old show that they took the budget off. So he decided to test everybody, screen test potential hosts. And he used me as just a host to screen test these people to see what those people were like sitting in a studio environment. And he actually called me afterwards and said, you know what, I reckon you're better than them. And I've suggested to Sky that you be the host. And that's how I became the presenter on The Crowd Goes Wild. And which is pretty lucky to be right place, right time, Blake. It's pretty fortuitous to be given that role. And then it's in terms of the Breakers, again, right place, right time. Sky had the Breakers, then they didn't have the Breakers. Māori TV had the rights to the Breakers, and then they came up again, the Breakers' rights. Sky took them, and I put my hand up and said, you know what, I love basketball. I'd love to commentate basketball. I'd never commentated basketball before. I certainly had watched a lot, and I kind of paid attention to what commentators did, but there was certainly no hard and fast rules that I was given, and sort of grew into that role to where I am now.
And we'll get into your commentary career very, very, very shortly. But going back to The Crowd Goes Wild, going through different iterations, So you started with and you can correct me at any point if I'm wrong, because I do this off the top of my head because I can't write. Um, so you started with Matt Robinson, and
Richardson,
then
yeah, Mark Richardson.
Richardson. Sorry, I beg your
You're right.
pardon. Uh, and then and now you got Rowan Corfu.
Yep. We got James
Okay.
McConey and Storm Purvis, among others. Yeah. Yeah. So Mark and I hosted the show from 2006 to the end of 2016, and he left to go and do the AM show. And then I did it with James McConey from there. Haley Holt was there for a little bit, but then she left to go and work on Breakfast on TV1. But James and I have been hosting since 2017 together. So we're in our fifth year now.
Yeah, it'll be by the time this comes out, the new schedule will be well in place. So um, can you at all tell the viewers why the decision was made to cut it down from if you whether it was 4 or 5 days to now the two? Is
So
it
I
because
think,
yeah?
yeah, no, you continue. Sorry, Blake, you go. You keep
Is it
going.
a rating problem? Is it um because of the COVID pandemic? If you can give some light or reveal, if you can't, that's fine. We'll just carry on.
It was more a decision. It was probably ratings based as well. Um, it costs a lot to produce television in New Zealand, let alone doing it 5 nights a week. And in the scale of things, Craig Goes Wild is relatively cheap to run. We don't go many places. We don't do many field stories outside of, south of Hamilton, to be honest. Um, so we don't travel that far. We don't have the resource of a news department or a newsroom like 1 and 3 have. So, and Sky aren't in the business of producing a whole lot of original content. They are at the moment, but you won't get New Zealand on air funding if you're doing sports, and you're making people pay to watch sports rights. So your New Zealand on air funding won't give any money to the crowd as well, which is I completely agree with. And so they decided that probably the best place for Crowd Goes Wild, the biggest asset, the biggest show was a Monday show, because that's when, you're going to get the most people watching, because it's always been a busy weekend of rugby, league, netball, golf, basketball, UFC. It's all happened on the weekend mainly. And they think it's a good idea to go an hour in prime time at 8:30, which really is, in my opinion, a step up from 7 p.m. 8:30 is a prime time slot. 7 p.m. isn't. I don't think it's regarded as prime time by the ratings, but I think 7:30 onwards is. That might have changed, so I could be corrected on that. But 8:30 is a great opportunity, and Thursday is a good chance to preview the upcoming weekend of sport. And it's more of a case of, we've got a really big following on Facebook. Our Facebook page is closing in on 250,000 followers. Our Instagram page is growing. There's a real opportunity to take our content and be online more and more, be more omnipresent, as it were. So still service the terrestrial viewer on normal television, on old school linear television, but also be on demand, whether it's on your device or on Sky Go or Sky Sport Now, and make sure that you're hitting everybody and be more targeted. And for a while there, Blake, it just became too expensive to market and promote. There's too many other programs that Prime want to promote and Sky would like to promote, and I think that we were taken for granted a little bit, and we did our job really well. We put out a consistently good program every night at 7 p.m. But I think the viewer as well took it for granted as well, because sport has plot lines, Blake, but it doesn't have a theme like Shortland Street does. It doesn't
Yeah,
have script writers, and current affairs can be anything. So 7 Sharp and the project could do anything. They could do sport. They could do sport regularly if they wanted to, but they can do any kind of story that they have researched, that their audience they know will respond to. So yeah, so the decision was made to turn it into an 8:30 show on a Monday and a show on a Thursday. And I'm really looking forward to it. It means I get more time with my family during the week, which I don't really get to see. I've got two young boys, a 2-year-old and 8-year-old, and my wife. I don't really see or get a decent quality time with during the week. So I'm looking forward to it.
And for me as a fan, I haven't been able to, even though I love your Breakers work, I haven't been able to watch The Crowd Goes Wild because it's been on the same time as a Shortland Street or as a project or as a 7 Sharp. So hopefully that will give more people like me the opportunity to actually watch it on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, our production budget is probably what the project's, marketing budget is for, when they launched the show. We were probably looking at all their billboards, and that spend is like, so much money. And Seven Sharp probably spends, you know, that kind of money as well every year on just marketing the show because they're in a dogfight, those two shows. And Shortland Street is just a beautiful beast, a great heritage brand on New Zealand television. And so that's pretty hard. It's a pretty hard space to work in, to be honest, when you're a little old sports show that runs off the smell of an oily rag in comparison.
Do you think it'll help you to increase your viewership?
I think initially it'll be hard to attract people, not only to change a time slot, but to bring the people with you from that 7 p.m. slot. I think personally it'll be a by the time 8:30 rolls around, a lot of people aren't just watching TV; they're streaming their favorite shows. They're heading off, whether it's to Neon or Netflix or Disney Plus. The show at 8:30 on 1, 2, and 3 or Prime might not actually grab them, and they want to go and watch something else on a streaming service. And most New Zealanders have at least one streaming service, it feels like, in their household at the moment. So
Yes.
that battle is part of the reason why a lot of our content will be online and will be on demand, whether it's on the Sky platforms or on our YouTube page or on our Instagram or Facebook as well.
And you guys have been also simulcasting on Sky Sport pay channel and the Prime for the last little while. Was there any other consideration to just make it a pay program and
I
leave it
think
on?
so. Yeah, I imagine that discussion probably has been had. It kind of defeats the purpose of having um, Crowd as an advertisement for Sky Sport. If you've got this free to air channel, why not continue to show the free to air viewer who doesn't have Sky? And there's a lot of people who have ditched Sky over the last 5-6 years. Those numbers, are readily available through the share market disclosures because they have to as a publicly listed company. But those numbers are starting to come back, and they're not necessarily coming back as satellite subscribers, but choosing to sign back up to Neon and choosing to sign back up to Sky Sport now, not necessarily both. And I think Crowd will be an asset, and hopefully Sky will push it enough because they don't push it enough, in my opinion. Blake, they didn't do enough with it. They took it for granted, and that's been my bugbear with it, is that they had other things to focus on, which I understand. But we're a heritage brand for Sky, and we're probably one of the success stories of their sports department outside of live sporting rights, which Sky is really good at doing. They're really, really good at making live TV and producing games and showing live sporting events. But they haven't had a TV show that's been around for as long as we have and been as successful and as we have been at The Crowd Goes Wild. So putting it behind a paywall is, probably not a great idea. If they can sell it on free to air, I mean, that certainly helps as well. And I think there's an impetus to push it on the free to air channel and attract advertisers around it and
And
sponsorship.
like going back to one of my other questions, I would I always have it on series link, but I and record the episodes, but I later then decide it's not as good watching it taped as live as it is with
Yeah.
the majority of stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's
Because
no, we have the same feeling when we do the show live, and very rarely do we ever pre record. There might be something in the studio that has to be, that takes precedent over us. Might be a live sporting event that they need the studio for. We pre record our Christmas special. Those are very rare times when we pre record, and it's the same thing. You know, it's just not the same as watching it live. And of course, the choices that you have at 7 p.m. You know, we were in a dogfight then. So you're absolutely right. When you series link it, it's like, no, yeah, it's good.
but I never tend to use it. I have it there if I need it for reference, but I never end up using it because if I'm gonna watch it, I'd rather watch it live. But I
Yeah.
never get the opportunity again. Anyway, I could go on about that for days, but going back to the breakers, you were saying that you weren't there experienced as a commentator, but I'm sorry to make you feel a bit humble, but you have actually become one of the goats of the Sky commentary team.
Oh, Blake, that's very humbling. Thank you so much. I've never expected to be called the goat at anything, but that's very nice of you to say. Yeah, it's excuse me, it's been a very much of a learning curve. So thank you. My dad was actually a basketball commentator, part-time basketball commentator. He commentated softball when he worked as a radio producer and presenter back in Wellington, where I grew up. And so I guess maybe subconsciously, Blake, I picked up a few things from him. He never really pressed on me to do it, but I enjoyed going to games where he worked and watching him do his thing on the mic. And I think maybe that's where that comes from. So yeah, thank you very much. I love commentating basketball. If I could be paid full time to do it, I would love to do it. That's my dream job, and I already have it, so I'm not taking that for granted. But I absolutely love working with Casey Frank as well. I've been very fortunate to be partnered up with Casey Frank. He's got a wonderful way of describing the game. He's very quick. He's across the game in all facets of it. It's an absolute pleasure to work with a friend in that sense as well. So yeah, he's made it so much easier for me to grow as a commentator every game.
Apologies there, I just had a few allergies, so I'm sorry for that. I was
No,
trying
you're
to
all
get
right.
something out my nose. But the reason I say about the go thing is my top four favorite commentators of all time. Oh, we'll go at top five because I've
Okay.
actually got five. So
Yeah.
yourself, Grant Nesbitt, of course. Who doesn't love him?
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson.
Yep.
I've got to keep track. You, Grant, Jeff,
That's
and
three. Yeah.
Justin Nelson, who's been on this show a few
Oh, yeah.
times. He's a
Yeah, I love
great mate of
Justin.
mine.
Nice.
And gosh, I've forgotten the other one. Justin Marshall.
Oh, nice. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, Grant Nisbet is the goat. He is the goat of New Zealand commentators. Yeah, he's actually, I'm privileged enough to say that he's a family friend. He worked with my mum and dad in Wellington and radio, so I've known Grant since I was a whippersnapper, and so to be included in that great list of commentators is pretty humbling, Blake. So thank you.
hopefully, he's another one of my dream guests. So hopefully, I can get him on a future episode. Anyway, that's another story for another time. Um, so there. So your most, you probably know where this is going. Your most famous breakers call of all time is the absolute scenes
Yeah.
comment that goes everywhere. What
Yeah.
was it like to be at the North Shore of Encender that night, and you may not have realised it at the time, but made a call that would go on be a bit of New Zealand, not only basketball history, but possibly sporting history. One of many.
To be honest, Blake, I get asked a lot when people bring it up. They want to know, did I have it prepared, or did I have it written down, or did I think about what I was going to say in such a moment? And I never write sayings down, because I think you just need a natural reaction. You should just be present. You shouldn't be scrambling for a piece of paper. And I think Keith Quinn, that's when he had that famous Jonah Lomu moment where he went over the top of Mike Cat and he went, oh, and he revealed in his book, I think it was his book, where he was actually trying to reach for a piece of paper to describe, and he ended up saying it further on in that highlight. I think it was all muscle and pump. That's what he wanted to say. But instead he went, oh. And that's, of course, is an iconic piece of New Zealand sporting commentary, which is fantastic. But I didn't want to not get caught out in a moment like that. But I feel like you should be that present in the moment, that you have that moment. And then I don't know, to be honest, Blake, I have no idea where those words came from. I've never thought about saying that. I never thought, geez, if someone hits a game-winning bucket, let alone a championship clinching bucket, would I say pandemonium, absolute scenes? It was a hot, sweaty Sunday afternoon at the North Shore Events Centre. The air conditioning, I don't know if they'd installed it by then or it wasn't working, but it was so humid and sticky, like it has been in Auckland recently. And it was just, I think you can hear it in the YouTube clip, because every now and again it pops up. People play it, and you can hear I'm actually really nervous in the call. I can try to compose myself, because I know it's going to be a pretty season-defining moment. So I'm listing off the names. Then Kena Ebekwe, in the timeout, Dean Vickerman says, "Go E." I think it's "Go E, go good," or "Go do your thing." And he actually ran too far around, or the play was a bit broken. And so he's a big man. He's like 6'10", but he's got a massive wingspan. So he was just able to catch. And it's a great call from Dean Vickerman, the coach, to get the tallest guy who has a jump shot to be able to rise above any defender. He just nailed it. And I just remember, one rule is let the moment breathe. So you don't have to come crashing over the top of the crowd, cheering and going really, going wild. You just let that breathe, because that's just emotion and atmosphere alone. So I gave it like 4 or 5 seconds, and those words just came out of nowhere. I guess because I gave it time, I needed words to describe what was going on in the venue, and those words came out.
What was it like to be a part of that as a fan, and did you have a funny feeling that something was coming?
Well, they won game 1 in Cairns, and they were a really good team. And I didn't think it was going to come down to a game that close.
No, apologies. I mean, in the respect that when they came out of that timeout, did you have a feeling like, oh boy, I think we're about to witness history? Like, did that run through your head? Something big is about to happen here. I better get ready for.
I thought this is really. I thought before it happened, I was like, this is pretty cool. This is going to be a moment that will probably end up on the news. And I'm really happy for the team. I'm really happy for the franchise and the fan base, because they love that team, and the owners at the time, the Blackwells, are lovely people, and they'd had a really crappy season in 2014 when a whole bunch of veterans left. And, after they'd won a three-peat, they had a bad 2014. It didn't work out for them. And they bounced back with Dean Vickerman as coach, and they'd made some key signings, and they'd played really well. And it was just like, wow, this is the continuation of a dynasty to win 4 titles in 5 years. let alone just to win one in any Aussie league for a New Zealand team is really hard. And they really did, they really did their fan base proud. And the further we get away from that championship, the more and more I appreciate what it was like to work on a span of success like that as somebody who was semi-tied to that team or close to that team.
Did it ever occur to you that, like, in your head, oh crap, I have to get this right, something gonna happen as well while you were preparing yourself?
I think afterwards you go, oh my God, I'm so happy I got that out. I didn't fumble the moment. I didn't stuff the moment. I didn't, um, jumble my words. I'm just sort of like retrospectively looking back and going, phew, got that one out.
Um, Now the Breakers have been a bit up and down. After that moment, they went on to win quite a few championships in a row, but sadly, in the last few years, and due to a combination of the pandemic and etc., it hasn't been the greatest time for them. But they have brought some impressive players. You got Basson, you've had Hampton come through, and a few other guys. Um, what's it been like to be a part of those ups and downs?
Um, it's really, I think last season when they were stuck in Australia for the first time, and there was no way that they were coming home, and they played more games than they'd ever had. That was hard. That was really hard. Not just for me. I mean, like it was hard for the team, and you could really feel it. And they were so impressive. They'd had everything thrown at them. They had injuries. They had a pandemic. They got stuck in Tasmania where they didn't enjoy. They wanted to be in Melbourne, which is far more of a cosmopolitan place and easy to handle. They're separated from their families, their friends. They're just living in hotel rooms, practicing, going to games, trying not to get COVID. And this season's pretty much the same again. They've had COVID twice go through the team. I think probably the first time was probably Delta, and the second time was probably Omicron. And again, they're just on the back foot, and injuries again scuppered, any way because they were looking good preseason, but again, just fate seems to get in the way of this team, and they've got great young players like Besson and Usman Deng is starting to play a little bit better, but they're as a business, this ownership group with Matt Walsh on the ground there leading it, they're in the business of sport, and the Breakers are also in the business of trying to win, and they're trying to balance that out, and that's pretty hard to do in a pandemic when you don't have a home base, you don't have your fans or your season ticket holders, you don't have that income. So you need to bring in two imports. One's a next star, and what happens is you sign these young players who are destined to be drafted. That's why they're coming here, to show that they can play in a tough league that's definitely in the top 10 in the world, if not top 5. That they can prove themselves at this level and be drafted. So what happens is you sign them for 2 years, and the NBA team that drafts them, this is what happened to RJ Hampton, buys out that second year of the contract at an agreed rate, which is what the NBL and the NBA brokered to have the Next Stars program. So the team who takes on LaMelo Ball or RJ Hampton or Usman Deng, they will get paid to have that investment. So there's the juxtaposition is trying to balance that out as a professional sports team with being a winning championship playoff contending team as well. So yeah, it's really hard. It really is hard.
And how has it been seeing those? First of all, how was it seeing, as we wrap up, how has it been seeing um, the likes of RJ Hampton and the Ball family go on to do great in the NBA?
It's so cool, Blake. It really is. Like RJ Hampton had a rough time. He spoke recently with the Herald, Christopher Reeve, who's a lovely guy, and which is a great interview. And he just admitted it was a good decision initially, but it wasn't the right situation for him. And he's done a really good job of getting through that and making sure that he stays professional and doesn't get disappointed that he wasn't as drafted as high as all those mock pre-draft boards had him. That game that they played at Spark Arena, LaMelo Ball versus RJ Hampton, the Hawks and the Breakers, I kind of forgot or didn't appreciate how much interest with the younger generation those two players brought, because those are the upcoming stars, and the kids, are all about RJ Hampton and LaMelo Ball because they're the same age. And I think there were 5 million people watching that game on Facebook alone. It's the most viewed game in the NBL history. And Casey and I got to call it. And when that stat came out, I was like, wow, we're on SportsCenter, our commentary is on SportsCenter, on Instagram, stuff like that. Millions of people are watching. And it's like, that's the beauty of the NBL. They're so proactive to try and push this league to not just being like a trans-Tasman league, but to make it a global league and attract players from Asia and America or in Europe as well, and make it a destination for people who want to make it in the NBA or get back into the NBA. And so it's pretty cool to see the NBL grow from strength to strength, despite a pandemic, ripping it apart for like 2 years now, 2 seasons now.
And finally, how was it to see in that whole season you had? And how do you think it has been for New Zealand basketball? Like seeing RJ have his big announcement on ESPN, one of the biggest sport networks in the world, and then have that game late in the season that the season was basically built around, be the hottest ticket in town and the hottest ticket on the internet. That
pretty
was
cool.
just incredible.
It was. You're so right, Blake. It's just incredible to see them have RJ on, with Jalen Rose, and just be there and announcing and hearing the Sky Sport New Zealand Breakers as a destination for him. It's pretty important. Like, it reinforces everything that the Breakers are trying to do to become, not just profitable, but be a winning environment, and showing them that this can happen for a guy like RJ Hampton as well, and LaMelo Ball especially. It might not be great for their playoff aspirations, because handing the keys to an 18-year-old, no matter how promising they are or how good they are at 18, it's still a man's league. It's still tough. It's still, still hard-nosed players coming at you who want to go at you, game in, game out, and that's a real learning curve for them as well. But to have that on a global scale is really cool.
As a fan, because obviously, as a reporter, you probably knew what's coming, or you might not have known. What to hear that announcement on ESPN, was it just like, wow, I just witnessed that? A bit like what was the moment we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, it was really cool. I put it up there. It was like not as good as, but it's like Steven Adams being drafted. It's that kind of moment. Like, just that Steven Adams was going to be a lottery pick, but you're never quite sure. He might have fallen out of the lottery, but he's still going to be a first round draft pick, because that's where everyone was saying he was going to go. But that moment, and he opens up his jacket, and he's got the New Zealand flag on the inside of his jacket, and it's like, there's a guy from Rotorua who's just absolutely, literally, outside of basketball circles, come out of nowhere. Trained by Kenny McFadden, taken under Jamie Dixon's wing at Pitt at the time, and played college ball. Probably was a little bit lost in college. It's pretty hard to play college ball by all accounts. You got to be pretty tough as a New Zealander to adjust to it when you're a teenager or that kind of lifestyle. But for New Zealand basketball, the Breakers ownership, they don't really owe New Zealand basketball anything. And I think a lot of Breakers fans have had such a strong connection through the legends of like Dylan Boucher and Mika Vukona, and Kirk Penny and the like. But I go back to this point: it's a business, and sport is a business, and the All Blacks are a business. The Warriors are a business. You can be passionate about your team, but Barcelona's a business. Manchester United's a business. The Yankees are a business. And they will trade on your loyalty for sure, because they want you to buy merch. But at the end of the day, there's an ownership group who need to make money, and shareholders who want dividends on that return. So that's where the breakers are at the moment. I'm fully behind it.
Well. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to you. One of my dream interviews of many. um, yeah. So thanks for coming on and sharing your experience. It's been a real pleasure. And to the viewers, we'll say goodbye. And to you, just hold on there for just a second.